Howdy doody, friendarinos. Let's talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance, because I've played this game for about 7 hours. It came out yesterday, and I mean, it's the type of game that I really enjoy, usually at least. I mean, Skyrim is my favorite game. Having a bit more of a realistic version of a medieval RPG with some historical context in it and historical settings and more realistic things like combat and whatnot sounded like a really fun romp. And don't get me wrong, there's things that I like about this game, there's things that I really enjoy. The combat is definitely one of them, despite it being a little bit buggy, as you just saw there, with it randomly zooming in and out wildly. But there's also stuff that's not so good. And unfortunately, I have to talk about a lot of that today, because as it stands, I don't think this game is commercially viable at the current point, because it's got so many performance problems, and there's a lot of stuff that feels very unfinished in it, and overall, I can't recommend it to anyone until that stuff starts to get fixed, and I'm quite disappointed that it is so poorly optimized and it runs so bad in most areas of the game so far. So what you're seeing right now is some combat. This is basically the third sword fight I've done in the game in 7 hours. Now, granted, that is very much my fault as well, because when I was playing this game, I kind of went into it under the assumption that I could just kind of do a bit of tutorial stuff and then wander off and forge my own path in the world. That is punished extremely harshly in this game, so if you just run away from the first town or the second town, you will just get immediately destroyed. So I feel like I probably could have got to at least this tutorial within the first hour and a half to 2 hours, but nonetheless, I feel like getting 2 hours in and still be doing incredibly basic tutorials is kind of a problem with a game, because I didn't really know how to sword fight or how to engage in combat or do a lot of the stuff that's required in it, anything to do with archery or bows. And this game aims for realism, and don't get me wrong, I think that it's kind of cool that the character and stuff is a guy who is trying to learn all this and you have to learn it, and it's all very in-depth, and to an extent I like it. But it takes too long to get you into this game. Like, even after this, I went on a half-hour little excursion with this, like, town patroller, and he just wouldn't stop talking. People don't shut up in this game and let you do things. It feels like the entire thing is a big hand-holding experience, at least for the first few hours. So that's something you really have to be willing to deal with. And I mean, that's one thing. That's something that I could kind of deal with if it weren't for the plethora of awful performance problems that are currently plaguing this game. So my frame rate in the game has been anywhere from 10 FPS all the way up to, like, I think 55. I don't think it's hit 60 once for more than, like, maybe a second and a half, depending on where I was looking. It seems to get better in certain areas, so, like, after I exited the first tutorial town, it seems like it got better. How your tutorial has the worst optimization, I don't know. That's literally the start of the game, but, I mean, who knows what's going on there. But the performance is so poor and so bad in regards to frame rates, like I just said, pop-in, and all this other stuff that makes the game run so crap that there's nothing you can really do to alleviate any of those, like, gripes or grievances. And I'm not even running it on the highest settings. I'm running it on, I think, the high settings, which is, like, the third highest, and I've turned down some other stuff as well to try to make it work a bit better, like the physics and some of the post-processing, and it still runs basically the same, which is really disheartening. And I'm running, like, 24 gigs of RAM, a GTX 1070. It shouldn't be running this bad, and most other games that I play that are similarly spec'd out or in the looks department, they run way better and at least stick at 60. Yeah, it's very disheartening to be playing a game that has so many issues when there's other stuff about it that I really like. I love the aesthetic in it. I think in general it looks pretty good. It's not like the best quality looking game I've ever seen, but it gets the job done, and it gets over what it's trying to do very well. And there's cool things like I enjoy the combat. The combat is difficult but rewarding. It's going to be very difficult to master, and I wish there was more of it because I've really only gotten into 2 or 3 fights, and 2 of those were training fights too. So it's very slow in the start, and that makes a lot of the other issues with performance a lot more obvious when you're playing. Like, I'll just be walking through a town back and forth for an entire in-game day trying to do stuff for the main quest line, and the game will just be chugging along at like 25 FPS, and that makes it really freaking irritating. Also been other bugs and stuff, like when I've spawned in after cutscenes, I've gotten stuck. There's been instances where I can't get upstairs. There's a ton of weird stuff going on with this game. It reminds me of Homefront Revolution when that came out, and all the GIFs that were coming out of stupid AI walking into walls. There's that in this game too. It seems like the CryEngine in general has some issues with that. They really need to put a lot more effort in trying to make these games run well and not have AI bugs, because it takes you out of the experience when you're trying to make a very historically authentic game. I'm not going to call this historically accurate. It's more like how people compare, like, Call of Duty to Battlefield. This is like the Battlefield version of Skyrim. It's more authentic in how everything's presented. There's no magic. It takes place in, I think, the 14th century in, like, medieval Europe, so that's kind of cool. You learn a lot of really neat things about the time period, and I think they've captured it very well. But at the same time, you know, there's still things like potions that you have to drink to regain your health, and all this other weird stuff going on that's very RPG-like. And that leads me into the most annoying mechanic in the game, which is the saving mechanic. Now, I feel like on paper, this mechanic might have been okay, or maybe some people are even going to really enjoy it. I absolutely despise it, and it annoys the absolute crap out of me. So, there are 2 ways to save in Kingdom Come Deliverance. You either finish a quest and it tells you, like, game saved on your screen, or you have to buy an item, which is called Savior Schnapps. It's an alcoholic beverage that you drink, and that'll save your game. Not any alcoholic beverage will do. It has to be this specific one. And it's damn expensive, and if you're not near a trader, it's damn hard to find as well. And that causes a lot of problems, especially when the first 4 hours of your game, if you do somehow manage to die or you go off the beaten trail and want to load back to where you were, you have to go through a bunch of cutscenes again, or you spend all your time running up and down a town doing meaningless stuff during the quest line, and you have to redo all of that again, but you can't save or properly save scum so that you can avoid doing annoying stuff like that. Now, I mean, having an option like that in a game for more hardcore players, I think is great, and I think if some people like it, that's fantastic, good for you. I would have loved an option to turn on being able to save wherever I want to and whenever I want to, because that lets me experiment with this game world and with the mechanics and see what happens and see what weird stuff I can, you know, do when I'm out in the world. And so far, this game really hasn't allowed me to do that, in part due to the saving mechanic and also due to the main quest line introducing tutorial stuff so gradually throughout it that if you ever run away from a town or just go and explore for a little bit, you're probably just gonna die because you don't know what to do. The game seems to go out of its way to take a lot of freedoms away from you as the player. Like, if you're not on the main quest line the entire time following the story, then you're probably not going to get as much out of it. There's very few side quests that I found when I was exploring around, and to me, that's a big disappointment. There are other people who are going to disagree with me. I was just kind of sick of doing the main quest because every single time it seemed to be, you have to go over here, you have to run this way, you have to go get this. It felt like they've padded out the main quest because they didn't want to put more side quests in the rest of the game. So now every quest line takes forever, and it's a lot of walking around doing nothing, and I really don't like that. I think that might be due to them trying to go for that, again, authentic viewpoint with the game, and that's fine, but authentic and realism don't necessarily translate into a good video game, and I think this game really suffers for it. And what you're seeing on the screen is basically what I've been doing for the majority of my playtime so far, which is walking around talking to people and trying to work out my dang compass and mission objectives because they're needlessly obfuscated from the player. Now, I get not hand-holding in games like in Morrowind, you get like your little text journals, you need to figure out exactly where to go and stuff. This game is annoying though because it has the compass, like in Oblivion and Skyrim, tells you where to go, but there's no icons in this game to tell you who to talk to, so I don't know which person I'm supposed to be talking to necessarily because people in the game look so similar. Same with things like items in the game too. This isn't like Skyrim where every item you can pick up, so you need to have indicators in a game like this to tell you, hey, this item is interactable, because I've spent so much time in buildings trying to see what I can pick up, what I can loot, what I can rob, but I don't know until I'm 2 feet away from it because there's no highlighting on any of it. And that's annoying rather than like smart RPG mechanics. It just makes things take longer than they should, and it basically discourages me from trying to do things anywhere outside of what the developer exactly intends me to do at that specific time. Like right here's a perfect example. I was trying to find out where to go for this quest line. On my compass, it says I'm inside the right building, but I didn't know who to talk to because there's no indicator on the game itself. But then I go around the side of the building and I find this random guard standing there who I had to talk to. Apparently it was him the whole time, but I had no idea where he was, so I just had to go up and randomly talk to all these people until I found the right person. Yeah, this game in general seems like it was rushed out the door. I know it was kickstarted, so that probably had something to do with it as well. And overall, it's not a polished experience, and there's a lot of stuff that obfuscates the really good parts about it that I like. Again, glitches are extremely common. Like we talked about, low frame rates. I've had my interact button break. That doesn't allow me to sleep. There is a fatigue meter in this game too, so that's kind of a problem if you can't sleep and get that meter back up. The chickens in the game are completely invincible randomly. I don't know why. I spent like 20 minutes on stream last night trying to hit one with anything, and it didn't work. All the other farm animals you can hit, and according to people on my stream, they saw other people doing it earlier. I couldn't do it. I don't know why. Chickens are made of rocks apparently, and they're impervious to swords. Who knew? Yeah, it just seemed like this game needed another 8 months at least to get a lot of this stuff worked out. So there's no way that I could possibly recommend it at the current state. That being said, there is potential with it. I do love some mechanics. I like that it does take a slower pace in some regards because it gets me more immersed in the world, and it's a very big experience, it seems like. I hope it opens up a lot more the more I play, allowing me to go to different areas and stuff, because so far, hours in, I'm still doing the bare minimum and the very basics. I really enjoy the combat. I think that it's got a lot of depth to it. Unfortunately, the frame rate is a problem in combat because there are counter buttons that need to be hit at specific points, but if the frame rate isn't consistent, then it makes it very difficult to hit a lot of those counters because you're never going to know when they're going to happen or how fast they're going to be coming at you. There's just so much in this game that has potential, but it's mired by its performance, so yeah. I'd wait on it for a while. It's got neat ideas, but there's no reason to pick it up until they at least get the frame rate steady. I mean, it can't even stay at 30, so how could I possibly recommend that? Oh, and I didn't touch on the audio yet. So this game has some of the weirdest inconsistencies in audio I've heard in a long time. People will be extremely loud sometimes, other times they're whispering in your ears if they get more than 4 feet away from you. You can barely hear them. Random sounds will be way louder than others. I was trying to do like a lockpicking tutorial earlier in the game. Lockpicking is very difficult, by the way. I was ridiculously bad at it. And when the guy was talking, I couldn't hear him because the river beside me was extremely loud to the point where it sounded like white noise in my earphones, and that's terrible. Other things like when you're trying to sneak through foliage or anything, it'll sound like it's in a tin can. It's really compressed, and there's some weird stuff going on with it that really needs to be fixed because it's incredibly noticeable and really bad in a few spots. Yeah, this game's a mixed bag. I kind of expected it to be a fustercluck if I'm being honest, but did I expect it to be this bad in certain areas? No. And that's a big shame because I really like parts of it too. It's not a bad game. It's just covered in fecal matter in regards to the processing and in regards to all the performance problems right now. That's very disappointing, but we'll see what happens in the next few months, I guess. So I guess you could say, it's Kingdom Come, it's Kingdom Came, and it's gonna be Kingdom Gone for the next little while. Heyo!